Good morning, hello everyone. My name is Raja ARUMUGHAM and I work for the United Nations in Geneva. I'm happy to be participating in Meeting the Minds organized by the Don Bosco School of Excellence. I thought it's a good opportunity for me to meet the young minds of Tamil Nadu, particularly Chennai and India, just to share my experience in life of where I started, what I did and where I am and what I plan to do in the future. Just to give you an idea that anything is possible in a country, in a democratic country like India, where irrespective of your background, it always provides everybody an opportunity to learn, unlearn and relearn and to achieve things in life which you never thought you will achieve ever in your life. Before I go into give you details of what I did, I just want to tell you about my background. I come from a background of agriculture. My parents belong to an agricultural family in the western part of Tamil Nadu. We come from the former Coimbatore district. Right now it's Tirupur district, and I grew up all my years in a small town called Satyamangalam, which is on the foothills of Western Ghats in the former Coimbatore district, and now it's in Erode district. My family is fairly large. I belong to the post-independent large family concept and the generation where we are a family of 7 siblings, 6 brothers and a sister, and my parents, as I said, originally belonged to the agricultural part of community. Family-wise, I'm the first generation graduate. Nobody in my family. My parents never studied. My mother never went to school. My father studied up to 8th standard. So I was the first one in the family to have gone to a college and taken up a graduate degree and then moved on to do a master's degree. So education-wise and family-wise, I was the first graduate from my family. Sort of everything was new. We didn't have any guidance, so we have to learn things on our own and relearn things on our own. So that was the kind of setup we had. In a small town like Satyamangalam, you hardly have motivation. You need to have kind of a motivation. So when we looked around for a motivation in those days, all you find is a local Tahsildar or an inspector in a police station. So, but the biggest VVIP used to come to Satyamangalam in those days used to be the district collector or the superintendent of police, because they all come in that car with the red light and with paraphernalia of people following them and people respecting them. So I was very inspired by that. I thought at some point in life I should go back and do something of what made those people and whatever they did. I really wanted to join the elite service of serving for the government. So my initial say, of course, I didn't have much of a guidance. I don't expect to have, you don't expect to have much of a guidance in a small town like that. And particularly I'm talking about 1960s and 70s when civil service was not anything familiar to people from rural area. It remained as largely a concept of metropolitan cities like Chennai and Delhi and Bombay. So people who had studied here used to make it into civil service in those days. So as a small town boy, I developed a liking, and I wanted to become, someday I wanted to be a civil servant. So that's how I wanted to join the civil service, so that I could have the kind of life and respect of what the collector and SPs used to have when I've seen them as boys. That's how I started. I always had that ambition of joining the civil service. I was very focused. I was very good, as I said, I was very good in studies, and I didn't know how to do about it. So I was learning. I was reading newspapers regularly to see who's the collector, who's the SP. So the first spark, I would call it as a spark in my life, came when I read about Mr. D.R. Karthikeyan. D.R. Karthikeyan, as you know, is a famous Indian Police Service officer of the 1964 batch, the man who investigated the Rajiv Gandhi murder case. He is somebody from our area. So in those days, he used to come quite regularly to Coimbatore. So every time he comes, there is a lot of coverage about him. So I used to read a lot about him, learn a lot about him, and I always felt very inspired by him. After my father, I would consider him as my inspiration. For somebody from a rural area who had gone up, became an IPS officer, he had held responsibilities at the national service level. So I looked at him as an inspiration for me. So that's how my inspiration into civil service started. But my father was a forest contractor, and when the government imposed restrictions on felling forest, my father has to close his business in Satyamangalam, and then we moved back to Tirupur, which is my hometown. I was born in Tirupur, but I spent my first 15 years of life in Satyamangalam, and that's where my formative years were held. Whatever I have today, whatever values I have learnt it, whatever inspiration or commitment I had, I learnt it all from Satyamangalam. It's a small town, people were innocent, and we, irrespective of what your religion is, irrespective of what your community is, we all live together as one small community. We used to go to mosques, we used to go to churches, we used to go to temples. We never differentiated between any religion, so we were going to all places. So whatever secular values I have, and whatever secular values I was able to show to wherever I worked in different parts of the world later, all came from Satyamangalam. That's where we learnt our basic sympathies and compassion and respect for other religions in Satyamangalam. So when the government stopped the felling of forests, when they stopped giving permits for forest contractor, we moved back as a family to Tirupur. That's our hometown. Tirupur is my time in Tirupur. I spent 3 years studying in higher secondary in Tirupur. Tirupur is another fascinating town. For moving from Satyamangalam to Tirupur was a very big change. Tirupur, as what you see, the dollar city, was just beginning to be a dollar city in 1980s, 77, 80s. That's when Tirupur was going from a small town banyan industry into it is getting its international status. That's the time it was starting. So my family was again in textile industry. That was the beginning of the emerging of Tirupur as an international city. So I was there at that time, and probably motivated by seeing too many foreigners coming, orders being placed, and doing export being growing in Tirupur was another motivation. Once when I joined Loyola, things were absolutely different. I believe the turning point in my life took place when I came to Chennai and when I joined Loyola. So since I had studied criminology and criminal law and evidence act and things like that, I had developed a little bit of interest in law. So I wanted to do law as a backup in case if I don't get into civil service. I had the backup plan. I don't pass civil service, I go back and do law. And preparation for facilities in civil service in those days was not many were there. So they told me the best place for you is to go to Delhi. So from Satyamangalam to Tirupur to Chennai, I kept my eyes on Delhi when I was doing my masters. I thought once when I write my preliminary in Chennai, for my mains and further studies I should go to Delhi, and I had very good marks in my masters. So with support from my friends in Delhi University at the time, I managed to get an admission in the campus law center in Delhi University, and I enrolled myself for law and simultaneously doing civil service. Luckily, by the grace of God, I cleared my preliminary in the first attempt. Then I went to do my mains. I was doing law and I was doing my mains in Delhi University, and I wrote my exam in 1985. That was my first attempt. In those days, you are eligible to write, this is pre-Mandal reservation days, you are eligible to write civil service thrice, and the maximum age limit is 28. So I started young. I had planned it young and I started young. I wrote in 1985. I wrote the prelims, then I went to Delhi, joined law, started doing law, and then I joined, I wrote the civil's main exam in Delhi, and again, God's grace, by next March I passed the mains exam. So the only one hurdle before me, it was the interview, by which time my English has improved quite a bit. It's not that it was fantastic, but it had improved a bit. But I had a little bit of confidence issues in facing an UPSC board where you have prominent people. But I went for the interview. I had coaching in Delhi. I attended courses for a week. I was a little bit confident. I went, and with all my wishes of my parents and guidance from teachers and friends and well-wishers, I cleared civil service in 1986 for the first time, and I was allotted to the Indian Audit and Account Service. I was disappointed because I was hoping to get the Indian Police Service, but I just barely missed it by a few ranks. So I managed to get into the Indian Audit and Account Service, and that's how I joined the Indian Civil Service, and I belong to the 1986 batch. I was sent to New York to audit and peacekeeping operation. The peacekeeping operation in those days were very, very few. So I was sent to audit the UN had a peacekeeping operation in Mozambique, and that operation had closed down and they were liquidating, and I was sent to audit the liquidation of UN mission in Mozambique. That's how my first exposure to the UN came. After 3 months, there was an opportunity coming up in a peacekeeping mission in Angola, and they called me whether I'm keen on going on there because they have shortlisted me. And I said, this is the only way I can enter the UN. Although it was a hardship mission, it was difficult, I said I am going. And that's how I came into the UN. I joined the UN as a peacekeeping mission in 1996, and that went with my experience in the audit service. So I went as the chief resident auditor of the UN in a peacekeeping mission in Angola. That was on the Friday the 13th, 1996. I emphasize on the Friday the 13th because a lot of people do not believe in or they have superstitions on Friday the 13th, but I joined the UN on the Friday the 13th, 1996 for a brief period. My initial contract was 3 months, and that was how I started. Today when I look back, I went for 3 months. I'll be completing my 25th year in another 2-3 weeks, but that's how I started in the UN. I joined peacekeeping. I had no idea at that time, but as and when I joined and started working, you realize it's a privilege to work for the United Nations, and it is a privilege. You working for the United Nations anywhere in the world, working with people from 194 countries, different religion, different culture, different language. Everything is different. You interact with people from so many countries. It is a privilege. It's a privilege, and the ideals of United Nations are far, far superior, and they go beyond the boundaries of nationals. They go beyond the boundaries of religion. They go beyond the boundaries of continents. They look at the ultimate aim of humanity and peace and security for humanity, and that is a privilege, my friends. It's a privilege to work for the United Nations. Yeah, once when I joined the United Nations, whatever ambition I had till that time was, I could see it's being fulfilled. In fact, it was much more than what I had wanted to be. Once when you're in a peacekeeping mission, it's a civil service. It's an international civil service. The UN service is called the International Civil Service, and anyone working for the UN is called an international civil servant. And I was handling uniform civil services from all over the world. Peacekeeping recruits military from any of the member states. So I was dealing and managing peacekeepers from every part of the world, and that's what I was doing since 1996. And whatever I wanted to become, I thought I had I had achieved that when I joined the civil service, because working for the UN, believe me, for any Indian civil service, irrespective of whatever service you have in, whether it is in IAAS or IPS or IFS or any of the central services, Group A services, one of the dreams of Indian civil servant is to work for the UN, at least for a brief period. But then, I was fortunate that I went for 3 months, and I'm continuing my 25th year now, and all my dreams were achieved at that time. By the time I joined the UN, UN is, as I said, it's a privilege, and it's a very unique, different experience. And working in a peacekeeping mission is not easy, because you live in unfavorable working conditions. You always live in conflict zones. You have barest minimum comforts in life, and even things like safe drinking water or food or anything will be a challenge at times. It's not easy, and particularly when you are in a conflict zone, it's all the more difficult. So I was getting slowly used to what I had challenges in working for the international civil service for the first 4 or 5 years, because you go in a culture, you go in a language, and then you meet people from different languages and culture. It took a little bit of time for me to assimilate, but once 4 or 5 months, like how I came in from Tirupur into Loyola, I had the same experience joining in the UN. But once when I'm settled, I'm comfortable, I didn't look back at that. I started enjoying working for the UN. Going into the UN, when you are in the UN, you can see world leaders passing by you. You can see them with security paraphernalia, and particularly during the General Assembly time, you have all the world leaders will all be assembling in New York, and you will be meeting all of them, at least seeing all of them. And that's the thing in Geneva too. When you are in the UN, meeting some of the people who you see on the television, seeing people you on newspapers is a very common thing. You will meet them on the corridors of the United Nations. Once when I finished New York, then I went to the war in the Balkans broke out. The civil war in the former Republic of Yugoslavia was a major one. Then I went to Kosovo. I went to Kosovo in 1999. That was the time I went as the chief auditor for the UN mission in Kosovo. That was a different experience, where a new country was shaping up. UN was established with the mandate of establishing a civil administration in the country, where starting from village to the municipalities to the regional, provincial to the national level, institutions were established. Going from Indian civil service and having exposed to the Indian civil administration, it was very easy for us to be able to help and assist the UN in establishing the civil administration in Kosovo. We had a lot of people from the Indian civil service who had joined us in the UN at that time to help us in the national building in Kosovo. So that was a different experience. I'll go back to Iraq. I was very keen on going back to Iraq, because I had lost some of my best friends in the UN in the Canal Hotel bombing, and again I had a lot of friends in Iraq from my first term. So I decided to give up a very comfortable life, very pleasant and very secure life and job in Geneva. Then I decided to go back to Iraq. That was in 2008, because I really want to go back and live the memories of the people my friends and colleagues who died in the Canal Hotel, and to help my Iraqi friends and that's the reason why I went back. But this time I wanted a change. I didn't want to go there as an auditor, so I went to join as an administrator. So I went on to become the chief administrative officer for the UN mission in Iraq, and for the last I spent about 5 years in Iraq during one of the most difficult and dangerous times in the history of UN, where we were living in the green zone. If you have heard about life in green zone is not comfortable at all. You'll have rockets and bombs flying all over the place. You have suicide bombs going off any time. So it was a very difficult time, and that was a time when you had a massive US presence, as what you see in TV. In those days when you enter Baghdad, the airport, that's again, it's a one-day journey. What used to be 2 hours used to be a one-day journey. When you land in the Baghdad, the airport, when you get out of the plane, you will see it's like a Hollywood movie. You'll have hundreds and thousands of army officers walking all over the place. You have helicopters, Black Hawk helicopters, you have airplanes flying all over the place. You see C-17s coming and going. It used to be like a Hollywood movie on an early morning. It was those days. But once when they moved, the UN was given the responsibility to establish whatever was required to do our job. That was a great experience. I was there for about 5 years. I was posted in Kuwait, I was posted in Baghdad, and I was covering, we had operations in Kuwait, we had operations in Jordan, we had operations in Iraq, so I was responsible for all that. When Iraq was continuing, we had problems in the neighboring Syria, and they said they were looking for somebody who had got a lot of experience in peacekeeping, and at the time they have also brought in a very high profile international personality called Lakhdar Brahimi, who was a very well-known figure in the international circles. He was a former foreign minister of Algeria, and they established a lot of peacekeeping missions. And they wanted somebody with experience to go work with them. That's how they sent me to Cairo. We were based in Cairo at the time, and I went to Cairo from Baghdad. I went to Cairo, and again, Cairo is another beautiful ancient city. I was in Cairo for about 6-7 months, and then when we were in Cairo, problems started in Cairo with the internal thing. Then they decided the best place is to move to Geneva, where I am currently posted for the last 7 years. What we do in Geneva is, as I said, I'm the Chief of Administration and Head of Operations for the UN operations in Syria. So we bring people from all over the world, Syrians, for peace talks in Geneva. We have been doing that for almost last 6-7 years. We have conducted several rounds of peacekeeping, several rounds of mediation work, and I've been helping the special envoy in organizing this. That's what I do now. When I talk about United Nations, why it's a privilege. Working for the UN is a privilege. UN it's got a lot of benefits. It's got a lot of prestige attached to it. That's why it's a privilege to work for the UN, and you get involved in things like what you see on a daily newspapers, what you have been as a student looking at the problems and issues of the world. You are part of it. You're part of dealing with them in the UN. UN has got its presence. It's a global thing. UN is the only institution, there are two institutions, UN and the International Olympic Committee, where every citizen in the world takes ownership of. We are all part of the UN, irrespective of whichever nationality you come from. UN is an institution, UN is an entity where every person in this world, every free person in this world takes ownership of. That's a privilege. And with the UN comes with a lot of, you get a lot of privileges and immunities, which is mostly given to diplomats who serve in other countries. UN has got that privileges and immunities globally. Wherever you work, there are certain privileges you can do. And one more thing in the UN is you can travel around the world. It gives you an opportunity for you to, if you are holding an official job and with travel responsibilities, you travel around the world. You see the beauty of the world. You also see the worst of the world. So you get an idea of between what you do in different places. Your family gets to travel. It gives an opportunity, and UN is a very good paymaster. UN pays you well. UN takes care of your privileges and immunities. UN takes care of your pension and health benefits. So these are all, there are a lot of benefits associated, in addition to the tremendous job satisfaction it gives you. It also gives you very secured life. Takes care of the future of your children, and it provides a lot of welfare for you, for your family, and gives you a lot of job satisfaction in what you do in the UN. That's why it's a privilege in the UN. What my appeal to the younger generations and those who are young minds who are looking at this video is, when I was a student, like most of you, our ambition was very limited focused. For me it was civil service, but I didn't look at anything beyond that. But you live in a different world now. You live in a world where whatever information you want in any part of the world is available to you on your palm. All you have to have is an iPhone or any artificial intelligence equipment, and whatever information you need, you have it. You don't have to search for it. And the world is globalized. Going from one end of the world to another end of the world, it doesn't take much of a time. You live in a globalized world. The opportunities are great for you. The world provides you fantastic experience, fantastic exposure, and the education system in this country has improved tremendously. Technology has gone up phenomenally high. We are very much advanced, despite the problems we have with population and other things. We have increased our capacity phenomenally to compete with any developed nation. So the world provides you great opportunities. All you need to do, as what I've been saying right from the beginning, is you remain focused. All you need to have is a clear idea of what you want to do in life. Stay focused, keep praying. That helps you a lot. When whatever you want doesn't happen overnight, you will have failures, you will be upset, you will have downfalls, but every downfall, you keep your faith, irrespective of what your religion is. Keep your faith in God, keep praying. I do that. I do that every day. Every day prayer is part of my life. Something with that I've learned it from a long time. That gives you the strength to overcome your problem, overcome your shortfall, overcome your limitations. That gives you the strength. You keep moving ahead, stay focused. The world is opening up. When I started, we were only very few. I'm looking back in 1986, we were only very few Tamilians in Missouri. We were about 6 or 7 in Missouri at that time. But what I would say, the awareness about civil services came into the minds of people much later, and now we have almost about, in a crowd of 800 to 900 civil servants in Missouri, we have about 70 to 80 civil servants from Tamil Nadu. So that outburst of awareness has helped a lot of people from all walks of life, particularly people from rural side of Tamil Nadu, get into civil service and go. Similarly, the opportunities in the UN is much wider and much broader than the opportunities in the Indian civil service. To be working for the UN, you don't have to be a civil servant. All it requires is a master's degree with a level of expertise. UN doesn't look for generalists. UN looks for professionals. You have to be a professional. You have to be an expert in whatever field you are looking at. Irrespective of what you do in life, UN always provides an opportunity, because UN is involved in everything in your life, from your day-to-day life, from culture, history, archaeology, medicine, languages, lawyers, logisticians. You provide anything, military, civil servants, teachers. It provides an opportunity for everybody to work in the UN. So look at opportunities in the UN. You can work in the UN. It's easy for an Indian with good amount of experience. It's very difficult. Like the civil servants, it's not possible for you to join the UN immediately. If you put in about 10 years of service, UN provides an opportunity for a second career. Like me, UN is a second career, and it continues to be a second career. Because my first 10 years was in civil service. So this provides my second career, and whoever is in whichever field you are in, you can join the UN and work. I really look forward to youngsters, particularly young women, because UN is very particular about 50% women recruitment and women representation. So it is easy for women who qualify and join the UN. You have opportunities lying before you and give you an opportunity to work anywhere in the world. One day you can be in Australia, another day you can be in Afghanistan, third day you can be in South Africa. It provides an opportunity for everyone to work anywhere in the world with the same level of salary, with the same level of privileges and immunity, with the same level of respect, with the same level of privileges, and with the same level of job satisfaction. Really look at young minds, our youngsters in this country to come back, look forward to a career in the UN, come join the international service, break all the barriers of caste, religion, language, country, and work for the humanity. It provides you an opportunity. It provides you a great job satisfaction and pride in working for the UN. If somebody who had never heard about the UN 40 years ago, living in a small town in Satyamangalam, can go back and work, you can do it. And I wish you all good luck and look forward to seeing you, some of you joining the international civil service. Come join the UN and help humanity live in peace and secured life. Thank you.